All right, hi everybody. We're going to talk about chapter 1 today. Thinking about developmental psychologists and the field as a whole. Basically, they're trying to study the process of how humans change or stay the same. And I think there's a quote. So from womb to tomb. So from conception to death we developmental psychologists are going to examine that whole process. So when developmental psychology was first starting, it was more focused on babies to maybe adolescents, maybe not even that long. And since then, they've realized that there is a lot of human growth throughout life. And so the field has really expanded to encompass all of that. There's 4 goals of developmental psychology: to be able to describe what's happening and then to explain how it's happening. Third is then to be able to predict, okay, well, I see this thing happening, I can explain why it's happening, what do I think is going to happen next? And then fourth, to intervene if necessary. So if I think there's going to be a negative outcome based on what I've seen before, and so what I can predict is going to happen in the future, then hopefully I can intervene and prevent that negative outcome. The book is broken up to developmental psych into 3 different domains. We're going to come back to this basically in every chapter and talk about each developmental stage through these 3 domains. So the first one is the physical. So what's going on in the body? What's happening in the brain? How are the senses, motor skills? How's the health of the person? So basically the biology, what's happening physically. And then second, cognitive development. Cognitive, associate that in your mind with thinking. So how, or the brain, what sort of mental processes do they have? How are they learning? What's their memory like? How are they developing with their language? Things like that. And then lastly, the psychosocial development. So this is, are they having any personality changes? Do relationships change, and what kind of relationships they have over the lifespan? Those are the 3 domains that we'll be coming back to over and over again in each period. Okay, and speaking of periods, I put a small chart up here of the typical developmental periods that we use in industrial Western cultures. But I just want to highlight that these are social constructions. So these are approximate, and somebody in a different culture might have completely different developmental periods. So this is just sort of the norm for our culture. It doesn't mean that it's right or the best or how it is everywhere else. It's just how the periods have developed here. There's also, I wanted to mention, there's also a bigger chart in your book if you want more details about the different periods. It's on page 4 to 5, and it spans both pages. So there are things that influence development. So heredity, what sort of traits do you get from your biological parents? And then the environment. So what is happening externally to you? What are you learning through experience? So basically this is the nature versus nurture debate. So heredity, biology, nature, environment is the nurture. So when you're thinking about a child, how much of what they do or how they develop is based on what they got from their parents, what's in their body, how much of that is determined already? Or are you somebody who maybe leans more on the side that the environment is more important, the people that they grow up with, the type of schools they go to, things like that, more important? We're going to talk about this more specifically in class. And then maturation. So this is an unfolding of a natural sequence of physical changes and behavioral patterns such as walking and talking. So we know that at a certain period of time, kids are going to start walking, but these are all approximate. So you would have to be very outside of the range to be considered extremely advanced or, extremely behind. So, yeah, it's just knowing that there's a sequence of things that are going to happen as a person develops, but there's still a lot of variance in the time that it takes to move through that sequence. So context of development, the family. So nuclear family, you probably know what this means. This is basically, another word for this that we would use is our immediate family. So in the US, we're normally talking about our parents or guardians, and then our siblings. It could, we know that today families look many different ways, right? So we might have had single parents, we might have had queer parents, we might have been adopted, we might have been foster kids. There's just a lot of different ways that families can look these days, and it's not as sort of normalized that it's a mom, a dad, and 2 kids, right? Which is historically what has been accepted as the nuclear family. A family is characterized often by their socioeconomic status, their SES. We'll probably come back to this quite a few times throughout the semester as well, just because economics have so much to do with the opportunities that people get to develop, both with their kids and as they get older. So really important to remember socioeconomic status, SES. In this particular context, it matters. So thinking about income, so just literally how much money do they have? Education, that's going to determine, what maybe your parents expect for you, what they've had experiences with, and so can help guide you. It's going to look different. And then occupation. So, is your parent a banker who goes to work in an office and wears a suit every day? Or, is your parent a service worker who has to work 2 jobs and has a uniform? It just, all those things might seem like they don't matter or it's not important, but they do shape how children evolve and develop throughout their life. And we'll talk more about how those specifically affect kids and what sort of influences they have as we go along. Just some more context. SES is related to developmental processes in that it affects how parents have verbal interactions with their children. So one, it could be the frequency of verbal interactions. So for example, if you have a low SES parent who has to work multiple jobs, they're probably not going to be at home as much. So they just aren't talking to you as often. Versus if you have a parent who has a well-paying job and they just have to be there for 8 hours a day. And there can be home every day at 5 to spend the evenings with you. You're gonna probably have a lot more verbal interaction with them at that point. SES also affects factors through the type of house you live in, what sort of food you can buy, what kind of doctors do you get to go to, how often do you get to have medical care, and then of course educational opportunities. So SES is, related and intersects with all of those other areas. So we do know that poverty-related risks increase the chance of negative outcomes, including things like emotional and behavioral problems, and then potential declines in cognitive potential and school performance. I want to be really clear, though, that that's not everyone, of course. These are just risk factors that we want to think about and then be able to intervene if we think that somebody is at risk, right? Just because somebody comes from a low SES situation does not mean that they're absolutely going to have these things. The risk of poverty may be indirect through its impact on parents' emotional state and parenting practices. And so what we mean by that is that if you do have a parent who's working multiple jobs, really tired when they get home at night, they're probably not going to be as maybe compassionate. Maybe that's not the right word. Maybe they're just tired, right? They don't have the same emotional capacity to give if they're exhausted. I mean, think about when you get home after just a really long day and how tired you are, and then imagine if you had a 2-year-old that is demanding your attention. The way that you're going to interact with that 2-year-old after a really long day is going to be different than if you had a normal or easy day. Your fuse just is not as long when you are stressed or tired. And so that indirectly over time affects how the kids grow up, right? And the environment that they're in. We also know that there are strengths and resilience factors that are found in low SES homes. So some of the things that they found is that parents feel as close to their children as wealthier parents do. So there's no difference in reporting their like emotional closeness with one another. They feel like they're still as close with their kids. That's what I do. Families attend church just as often. And then lastly, they actually eat meals together more often than wealthier families, which is interesting. So there's definitely been a shift in thinking that like, hey, let's look at how people overcome these obstacles that are put in front of them, because there is important resilience data that could be collected there. All right, so culture refers to a society or group's way of life. So this could be customs and traditions, their laws, knowledge, beliefs, values, language, physical products. So when I refer to culture, I'm talking about all of those things. The culture has to be able to be transmitted from one person to another, and that can be done in a lot of different ways. So somebody can just tell you, or it's stuff that you can observe in the environment and then learn. So an easy example of this is like, okay, if you go to the post office and there's a line of people, you don't automatically just walk to the front right and cut everyone. You have recognized, either because somebody told you when you were little or you observe that there are people waiting in line. I'm going to stand at the back until it's my turn. It's culturally something that we do. We wait in line. That does not mean it's the same in every culture, right? So that's just a tiny example of how much we absorb from what's going on around us. An ethnic group is people who are united by their culture, so all of those things listed above, their ancestry, maybe their religion, their language, what nation they're from. So they have something else uniting them other than what is just around them. Okay, normative influences. These can be biological and environmental events that affect a lot of people in the society, and this in a similar way. So this first one here, age-graded influences, are highly similar for people in a particular age group. So most people in our culture go through puberty from